Hi everybody, welcome to Bello's. My name is Catherine and today I'm going to show you how I created this card that I'm calling Flurries. This is the 8th card and the 4th for me in the 12 tutorials of Christmas that I am creating this year with Elizabeth. I'm kind of calling this a reverse emboss technique. I created the background sort of by accident when I was trying to do something completely different. Didn't get the result that I was looking for, but it looked so cool and I was so surprised by the way the mica in my sprays resisted the embossing powder, and I just thought it made a really pretty card and I wanted to share that with you. So let's talk about what we need to get started. For this technique, I recommend using a piece of 4x6 hot press watercolor cardstock. I have not tried it with any multifarious or other multimedia cardstock, so I'm not sure how well it would work. So we're going to stick with this for today. I have a piece of 4 1/8 by 6 1/8 colored cardstock and then a 5x7 base. In addition to that, you'll also want 1 or 2 pieces of offcuts. Again, this is the hot press watercolor cardstock, and the only reason I chose the offcuts in that is because they match my card topper. Because this is an embossing technique, I will be using my embossing pillow. I have some silver embossing powder as well as a white opaque. To embellish my card at the end, I'll be using some Star Bright's holographic glitter by Lavinia. I also have a Blue Moon Mysticals mica spray. We'll be using that today, and some cool mint stickles. You'll want a brayer to create this background. For inks, I'll be using VersaFine Clair and Bally Blue and Versamark. And also to embellish at the end of my card, I have my blue sparkle and my purple Posca pen. I have Wink of Stella in silver, and then a glue pen to use my glitter. For stamps, I'll be using both Lavinia and Cardio. We have the Snowflakes Small, the Snowflakes Large, and then the Christmas Sentiments from Cardio, and I'll be using the Let It Snow stamp for that. In order to cut out my label, I'll be using my Tim Holtz tag dies. I have a mini cutter that I'll pull over, a heat tool because you cannot emboss without a heat tool. Well, you might be able to, but I'm not going to recommend the methods to do that. I also pulled out my Lavinia Snowflake stickers. I'm not sure if I'll use the stickers on my final card, but if you are somebody who maybe doesn't like the look of ribbon, just want a little something extra, I realize that this is a consumable item, so I'm not really going to be holding on to the background paper once I'm done with this. So I decided to cut a 1/4 inch of paper from the backing of my stickers, and I may use that in the end on my card. I'll also be using the Snowflake stencil. This is one of the newer items from Lavinia, and some foam tape to just pop up my label. Just want to remind everybody that Bello's is liquidating, and I try really hard to pull in some elements of things that you may already have in your collection that you have purchased from Bello's. Sometimes I do go on the website and look to see what's still available and try to pull that in with my tutorials, but I am filming this a few weeks ahead of when you'll actually be seeing it. So I'm not sure if the things in my video will still be available when you view the video. Just remember, if you are looking for any Cardio or Lavinia products that Bello's does not have, does not carry, or has sold out of, then you will want to go directly to the Lavinia website or the Cardio website. Let's pull this all together and get started. We'll begin today by embossing our snowflakes in silver onto our hot press watercolor card topper. So I'll do that using my Versamark ink. And because I'm only doing a few of these, I'll just use, I pulled 3 snowflakes out of my collection that I like, and I'm just going to use each of those once. So I'll do a bigger one at the top, another large one near the bottom, and then we'll do the smaller one in the top right corner. Just kind of try to stagger those. Then I'm going to just pour my embossing powder over the top. Give it a tap. You can brush off any extra. Now, I did forget to use my embossing pillow before I started this part of my project, but I think that's okay because if it turns out a little bit messy, it's going to be covered up later anyway. So I'm going to move this to the side. Now, with my sentiment, because the lettering is very delicate, I do actually want to make sure that I use my embossing pillow for that part of my project. And I'm going to do 2 just in case I need an extra. So what your embossing pillow does is it takes the static away, and it also keeps the powder from settling into the grain of the paper, which sometimes will make your project look a little messy in the end. So we'll go ahead and just ink that up. And then our extra. Okay. And that is all the stamping we'll be doing on this card. So let's go ahead and use our heat tool to emboss. The next step in this card is going to be to brayer some of our VersaFine Clair over our background. We want to work pretty quickly to make sure that it is still wet enough for the embossing powder to stick to it to give us that kind of snowy look. So we'll be brayering our VersaFine Clair ink over the cardstock, and then we'll be using our Mystical spray with our stencil to pull in the snowflakes. So I'm going to give it a little shake so it's ready to go. And let's go ahead and brayer that blue ink over our card. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to be covered up. All right, that's probably fine. Let's go ahead and put our spray, our stencil, over our card. Make sure that mica is really mixed up inside that bottle. And I'm going to give it a spray. And this is pretty cool how the embossing powder will resist the spray. Right, and we'll put that aside. All right, and let's go ahead and just cover the whole thing with our white powder. Get it right to the edge here. We'll come back in with your heat gun. So here we have our embossed background. It actually kind of feels neat to the touch. This I created completely by accident, but it is sort of like a reverse emboss technique. The only thing I can figure is that the metallic spray from the spritz kind of resists the embossing powder, and that's how we get this really cool snowflake look. Let's go ahead and finish the background on our card and just add some details to bring out that little blizzard we're trying to create. So I'm going to add some splatters with my Wink of Stella just to give it a little more silver across the top. So we'll get that flowing. Make sure it's working well. Okay, and so adding a little more shimmer over the top. I'm going to use my blue sparkle Posca pen. Get that primed up. Ready to go. And let's bring in the purple. Let's add the finishing touches with some Star Brights glitter and finally some stickles. So I'm just going to prime up my glue pen. And then some stickles. Here's my finished and assembled card. We used the label we created with the Let It Snow stamp and embossed in silver. I also, as I stated at the beginning, trimmed off a piece of 1/4-inch paper from the background on my snowflake stickers. And if you wanted to, you could even add, let's go ahead and do that. We'll add one of the stickers to our label. Which doesn't really show up, so maybe you want to skip that part. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you're not already a member of our Facebook groups, please consider joining us at Del Bello's Designs Lounge for all projects made using Lavinia stamps, and Del Bello's a la carte for all other stamp lines Del Bello's sells. See you soon!